Hello and warmly welcome to SAP on Azure podcast episode 190. Today is April 30th and today with Robert and Holger we're here to talk everything and anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hi. So security, it's one of the, first topics whenever I discuss about moving SAP on the client, generally about the enterprise load. And maybe one of the product or suite of the product or platform you might maybe heard is called Microsoft Defender for the Endpoint. It's an enterprise security platform designed actually to prevent, detect, investigate, and respond to advanced threats. And typically, today security, it's not just about the antivirus as well, but much more. And because those attacks are becoming much more sophisticated, here comes into play help of the artificial intelligence and device learning as a backend capability. Of course, for us, it's most interesting how we can basically protect the crown jewel, which is the SAP here. And here we are here to talk about the currently new releases and new documentation, both for Windows and Linux for the SAP, about Microsoft Defender for the Endpoint. But before we start, I'm more than happy to welcome here Cameron as an old kid of the blog and the new kids on the blog, Gopalakrishnan and Ankit. So hi, hello guys, and warmly welcome. Just maybe can you give us a short introduction, who you are and what you're doing? Maybe start with it, Cameron. People knows you, but still, yeah.
Hi, Goran, Cameron Gardiner. I'm based in Singapore. I've been working for Microsoft for 17 or 18 years, covering the SAP workload from an engineering point of view. And Ankit, you go next.
Yeah, hi, myself Ankit. I've been working for Microsoft since the last 2 years. I'm Principal Engineering Manager, specifically for the engineering group. I take care of Microsoft Defender for Linux platform.
Gopal.
Hey everybody, hey Goran, thank you for having us here. My name is Gopal. I lead the product management team for MDE on Linux, part of the broader MDE suite, of course. So pleasure talking to you all.
Sure. So Goran, I've been working with these two gentlemen from MDE to put together some comprehensive documentation for SAP HANA and SAP NetWeaver systems. And you can see on screen, we've developed documentation, Defender for Windows, and there's another one, Defender for Linux.
Both Linux, right?
Yep, both of these are essential these days. It's no longer sufficient to think that you can put some ACLs on a network and that will protect it. We are in the next generation of threats have emerged, and I think a lot of our SAP colleagues are not aware of this. They think that they can isolate the SAP virtual machines and they'll be fine. They can limit the logons. Yes, you have to do all of that, but you have to do more these days. I'll give you one example of a threat that will maybe help some of the audience understand what we're dealing with. Most people are familiar with Windows Event Viewer. Windows Event Viewer allows you to store a very small amount of binary data with each event. So, for example, if you configured it to create an event every time a user logged in, there's the possibility in Windows Event Viewer to store a small amount of binary data. Well, since a number of years, some threats have been out there. They store malicious code inside Windows Event Viewer, and then they have a loader mechanism running in memory that will go retrieve the malicious code through API and execute it.
So it's not just about the files protection only, right?
So,
but much more.
Yeah, we found that most customers, a majority of customers, were putting some form of file based antivirus software onto SAP systems, because they did recognize that there was a threat. But the point is, the threats have evolved into what we call fileless threats. So this is where you need to put the next generation of protection technologies on, and that's what we've documented here. Defender is now far more than just an antivirus engine where it scans a file and compares it to a database of signatures of known threats. So Gopal can maybe give an overview of what is Defender and how it can help us.
Thank you, Cameron. Yeah, so I think great example there with respect to how threats have evolved, right? So I think attacks are getting sophisticated every single day, right? And so far, in the journey of where attackers have come to, we can see this evolution from, operating in silos on an endpoint to, laterally traversing, moving away from simple file-based attacks to advanced memory-based attacks and so on. And I think that just highlights the need for one, making sure that you've got layers of security and you've got the right levels of security protecting your assets, right? And when it comes to attacks, data is paramount. Data is basically your crown jewel. That's what you're protecting. And when it comes to critical assets like SAP, we've done a lot of work with Cameron to make sure that tools like a Microsoft Defender for Endpoint can be deployed to these critical assets while making sure that your business continues to run in a smooth manner with no disruption whatsoever. So just to give you all a quick overview, so Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is a modern endpoint security solution that's giving you a whole array of capabilities that will make sure that you are preventing attacks from happening in the first place. You're protecting against attacks as they're happening. You're stopping attacks on their tracks as they're happening, and also getting visibility into other detections. If at all there's a certain malicious event that has happened, how do you get detection and visibility to what has happened? And more importantly, how can you respond and contain those threats? So when you look at Defender for Endpoint as a suite, you get the full gamut of capabilities, which starts from your posture management. How do you make sure that you're, keeping vulnerabilities out of the door? Your attack posture is minimized to make sure your attack surface is minimized, and there are not so many entry doors for attackers to come through. And then we've got the capabilities with our next-gen antivirus and the endpoint detection and response, which is giving you detection across the attack kill chain as it's happening. And the beauty about these product offerings or these capabilities that we have with next-gen AV and EDR is the power of intelligence that comes with it. So I think Microsoft today is the industry leader when it comes to threat intelligence, when it comes to knowing about what attacks are happening there. Our cloud is processing trillions of events at the back end, and we have the intelligence to detect what attacks are happening out there and stop them in their tracks. So all the the power of machine learning and artificial intelligence that comes through in identifying these threats with our cloud-powered backend, that drives the next generation protection capabilities that comes through with our AV. So we are,
Yeah, I'm just thinking. So basically, it's the amount of the changes and the threats are exploding exponentially in these days comparing to the past. So I mean, the only way to tackle it actually, it's not just by fixed code, but actually really employing the AI behind it in order to figure it out, the context and what's going on, right?
Yes. And we do all that heavy lifting for our customers behind the scenes, right? As long as you've got Defender for Endpoint deployed, it provides you the protection capabilities to stop malware in their tracks. EDR gives you the visibility in the form of alerts, incidents, etc., so that your SOC can then go in and see what's happening and take action. There are response actions that you can take then and there right from the portal to make sure that you stop attacks in their tracks. And the other point I'd also love to add here is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is not just a siloed product offering, right? It fits squarely into our overall XDR strategy, which is to say that if you're looking at an attack across the entire kill chain, we are the best player out there that can give you visibility across the entire kill chain as it's happening. So for example, if you've got, look at the Defender suite, right? You've got products that give you protection across all domains, from email to endpoint to data to cloud apps and so on. So if we are able to see an attack that starts as a phishing email, for example, a malware executing from there, a lateral movement happening onto your domain controllers or onto your servers, and some data exfiltration happening from there, we get visibility and signals across all these domains that we are able to process in the backend, correlate that into an incident and tell you exactly what happened across all these domains rather than just look at endpoint or data as a silo. So
and I believe this product is actually will work also in the SAP context, not just for the cloud-based SAP system, but basically also the on-premise or the hybrid stuff as well. I mean, as is very often, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah.
Gopal, one of the key benefits we have is the correlation between multiple vectors, because something might not be suspicious in and of itself, but when it's viewed across the entire chain, it is detected and stopped, the ability to stop it as well.
Absolutely. Yep. So that's the full gamut of the capabilities and benefits that you get with Defender for Endpoint, from protection to detection, response, and even more advanced managed services that we have to offer today. So that's the suite at a high level, and I think we can dive into the the SAP specific capabilities. And as I said, we've done some great work here to ensure that MDE can deploy across these Windows and Linux servers while making sure that your business apps continue to function without any disruption. So we can dive into that.
So Goran, the page you've got on screen at the moment, the Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence, that has a lot of information about current threats. So Blizzard is quite a famous case at the moment. So typically I find a lot of the SAP Basis team don't have too much awareness about the security. One thing I'd emphasize, and I emphasize it in the documentation I wrote, is this can only be successful when the security team, enterprise security team, and SAP Basis admins work together.
Yeah,
that's the only way this is going to work. So I would say, please, to the enterprise security team, make sure you involve the Basis team. And Basis guys, your systems are vulnerable if you don't have some form of protection. We would recommend Microsoft Defender, minimum the AV and the EDR, but you have to have something, development, QA, and production. We have tested this. We get very, very limited telemetry on our back-end system about customers that have MDE deployed with SAP, but we do know there are many, many thousands of customers out there running this successfully.
Yeah.
And in the documentation, I give you a few pointers on what to do.
Yeah, you also basically listed, for example, an SAP notes, which talks about generally, also Defender, but how is the SAP position here, and in general, and how is for this particular Microsoft products, They always ask about how about the support.
Okay, good question. So does SAP support Microsoft Defender? So conventional antivirus technology, SAP has the ability to provide some level of assistance with conventional file scan antivirus. Now, when we move into fileless threats and what we call polymorphic malware. So malware that is continually evolving and changing so that it cannot ever show up on a file-based, antivirus signature-based tool. It's never going to show up because it's always changing itself. SAP have said to us, I recommend to people to read the SAP note. The SAP note says it's no longer sufficient just to put ACLs on your VLAN. It's no longer sufficient just to have antivirus software that does IO interception and compares it against a database of known threats. No, that's not sufficient these days. They say you have to use some XDR tools. They acknowledge that, but they say SAP is not in a position to be able to assist with support cases where there are problems with SAP software and XDR software like MDE. So yes, it is supported to run MDE with SAP applications, but if you have a problem, SAP asks that you disable it and recreate the problem.
Right.
Now,
just to exclude that potentially the antivirus could slow down or make issues.
Yeah, in reality, it's very difficult for SAP to support the software because our engine could be behaving in a different way tomorrow versus today, because it's receiving more information about what threats are out there. So but the very quick answer to the question, does SAP support Microsoft Defender running on Linux servers and Windows servers together with HANA and SQL and Oracle and DB2 and other databases? The answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, and basically, as you mentioned, I mean, here is exclude the SAP file, the database file, but it's not just about protection. It's not about protecting the files, as you mentioned. You know, so it's much more broader scope, and that also is important that these tools and products are running in order to offer a holistic approach and holistic protection, right, on the different levels as well.
So maybe I have one question also in the direction. So maybe for Gopal, you mentioned the importance of the chain, of the advantage of the Microsoft Defender that is controlling complete chain. But I mean, you know, customer are living in mixed environment. So let's say that customer have a managed service provider who is managing SAP systems for them. Maybe they have Microsoft Defender, maybe they have something else. Maybe customer also have Microsoft Defender and managed service provider have Microsoft Defender. Is there any standards? What is that all antivirus company are working together to somehow say, hey, you know, I want to learn from Endpoint till Endpoint and somehow have correlation ID to see what is happening in complete this chain? Is there any movement in that direction?
Yeah, I don't think I fully understood that question. Just to play it back. So basically, what you're saying is, for the correlation to happen, if the application is hosted by a managed services provider versus the other part of the estate being controlled by the customer, how does that work? Or is the question
exactly. So when you have complex environment, when you sometimes you don't have a control what is happening there, but still you have want to have you want to be able to track this chain, you know, to see what is happening, where it stopped, where it started, and something like that.
That's a great question. I don't think I have a direct answer to that. I might have to check that. But what I can do, what I can kind of think at a high level is, if you've got data across multiple tenants, there might be multi-tenant based configurations, etc., that we are working towards, etc. But if they are completely different siloed tenants, then the correlation is kind of happening at telemetry that you get in from that particular tenant. But what customers can also do is with the modern SIM based solutions, you can basically pump all that telemetry to a sink like Sentinel. And all that correlation can happen in that particular backend. Now, remember that the value that you get here is not just about the data and Microsoft doing all the correlation for you. And, of course, those are going to result in detections and so on. But when you have a sink, when you have a SIEM solution with all the data from across these different domains coming together, your SOC can now go and look up the data. They can go hunt on this particular data and figure out what kind of patterns am I seeing across the environment. How is this particular, something which is suspicious as an activity? For example, did I see something here execute which is out of the normal? Let's say, for example, you have a suspicious login from a different location or a different IP address, and from there you see some lateral movement happening, etc. So your team can actually, with that kind of setup, go hunt on the data that we are providing to correlate or derive some of those correlations by themselves as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm just thinking also in the SAP context. So Cameron, how should the customer start? I guess typically whenever you want to try out, you don't want to do a productive system, right? Immediately in the first point.
Yep. Our guidance is definitely to start with Dev and QA. Goran, maybe we can start going to the top of the Windows documentation.
Yeah, sure.
And we can go through, so it gives a little bit of advice about what the product is, and ask for the enterprise security team, please involve your basis team. Don't try to do this alone. SAP is not a normal workload. You have to have the basis team on board. It's a joint project. And then if you scroll down, now, the basis team shouldn't be Defender experts. The SAP support statement for Defender, and I think I link in the SAP note at the very bottom of this paragraph.
Yes, here, yeah.
And there they say it's really no longer sufficient to have the traditional file I/O and ACLs on your VLAN and things like that. So take a look at the SAP notes, and then top 10 recommendations. We can very quickly go through. So point number 1, a lot of the SAP basis folks out there think that if they do number 1, they're protected. And to a limited extent for file-based threats, they possibly are, but this will not help you with fileless threats. So it's really no longer enough. Number 2, deploy on Dev and QA. Number 3, real-time protection is enabled by default with our Windows version of Defender. This is in contrast to Linux, where we recommend scheduled scans. So what we recommend is deploying Defender for Windows with tamper protection on. And when you have tamper protection on, that means real-time scanning is enabled, and behavior monitoring is enabled, and other feature set is enabled. This is in contrast to Linux, where we have a different set of recommendations, just due to the fact that we have different sensor technologies, and Defender for Windows and Defender for Linux necessarily has to be quite different products. So
number 4, jointly to work, right?
It's not a mistake that I'm mentioning the enterprise security team and basis team to work together multiple times in this document. That's not an accident. Number 5 is really important. What you want to do is get a performance baseline, just core metrics, CPU, disk times, memory utilization. Get a baseline for maybe a week or so before you deploy Defender. And what we're looking for is any deviation. In all of our testing, we haven't seen anything significant, but we do have some additional guidance around. There's some customers out there who have, say, SAP trans or log directories with millions and millions of files. This can potentially be a problem. So number 6 is use latest releases. Number 7 is the exclusions, really important. Don't rush through this. If you've got standalone engines from SAP like T-Rex or Adobe Server or a content server, spend the time to sort out your exclusions. For those customers who have access to a highly skilled enterprise security team, look at contextual file exclusions. We don't have time to go into it here, but that's quite a good feature. Number 8 is what the default endpoint settings should look like. And number 9, we recommend configuration using basically policies. So instead of, please don't configure individual endpoints with individual exclusions. It should be through policies.
Yeah. So it's propagated automatically for the whole environment. It makes sense, yeah.
Okay, if we don't have time to go too deep, but there's one important point, I think, at the bottom of the next paragraph, if you keep going down. So the point in purple is we have customers out there with 20, 30, I think some nearly 40 application servers. What we need to make sure is we don't have any security software that is going to simultaneously on 20, 30 VMs scan onto the same SMB source, because that could really overload that SMB or NFS source. So, for example, if that was Azure Files or NetApp or whatever, if you have 20 or 30 servers all scanning the same source, that could overload it and cause problems. So just
and potentially, performance issues to the SAP. I mean, not caused by the SAP itself, but maybe through the scanning, different one. Yeah.
I think one point to add here, Cameron, is also maybe just phasing out the deployment approach, right? You could start with EDR, you could have your AV in passive mode, get the schedule scans done, and then you can choose to turn things on as you fine tune it further. That could be an approach as customers look to ease into their deployment.
Yes, absolutely. For the Linux platform, yes. What we found with Windows is that the tamper protection tool basically means that if you deviate away from quite a strict set of parameters and features, then your tamper protection will be set to off, which has some other consequences. So it's easier to do a phased implementation with Linux. With Windows, if you're eventually disabling the tamper protection, that's going to cause other things. So, but it's a valid point. Start with dev and QA. And if you have millions and millions of files on your user SAP trans, please look at archiving that before rolling this out.
Basically, what you mentioned also with the perf monitor, I mean, check it, when you enable it and compare it with the previous one when it's not, and then definitely they will get a feeling how much is kind of influencing, or maybe to identify the potential issues on a performance side, right?
Yeah. You'll see in the documentation here, I put 100,000 files. It's very difficult to give a number honestly,
Yeah.
We have customers where we have significantly more, and it's not causing a problem. But I think we came across some customers out there. I think it was something like 50 million files.
Okay.
So it's some absolutely, how they managed to do it, I don't know. But
That's great.
yeah, I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah, maybe the jobs from the last SAP job from the last centuries or something. I don't know.
It was quite a large customer, so a very busy system.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, and then obviously interfaces. Now, the kinds of files we have with SAP are not likely to trigger EDR inspection a lot of the time, but interface files might be XML, could be, I don't know, JSON files.
Yeah.
They might be the kinds of files that are more likely to trigger EDR to take a look at inside those files. So highly recommended that your interface server is obviously not running any SAP software, is adequately sized, and yeah, XML files might present a higher risk profile than other files.
Great.
So do we want to switch over to, so at the end of the document, I give us, so we normally don't duplicate documentation like commands and things like this. We normally don't do this with documentation, but the audience for my documentation here was both the basis team and the enterprise security admins. So I did, in this case, give the basis guys some useful commands. Obviously, the enterprise admin and security admins, they already know them, but here we depart from convention and duplicate some documentation.
Great. I mean, I believe we could go deep dive for hours here.
But I think, you know, what I'm learning here is very interesting, because, you know, we are, as we repeatedly mentioned here several times, that is not just enough to monitor what is happening on file system. Yeah? So there's a different level of threats now. So then I think that it's completely different somehow dimension, because now we cannot live also without other part, which it's part of this security information and event management, like Sentinel, where we need to somehow say, hey, if something happened, we need to react. If something happened here, we maybe need to somehow, you know, drop this line. So it's not just defending. So because it's much more complex way of threats today. So we need to find a way to react and to maybe protect on some other levels that's no replicating or installing somewhere else. So on the file level, it was always clear. I find something, I remove the file, I'm done. Yeah. But now it's much more complex. Yeah? So we need to react. We need to learn how to actually propagate what we find to other levels. Yeah? I think it's not just defending, it's much broader topic, actually.
Exactly. I mean, let's take a case if you got a remote access Trojan, an RAT, a rat on your system. That remote access Trojan will eventually try to communicate to its back-end command and control. And, you know, it could start exfiltrating data. It could start, I mean, an example of what EDR might pick up is if it determines, if it sees a whole pile of files getting encrypted, well, that could be ransomware. So that's one of the benefits of an EDR XDR solution, is it will monitor those sort of system calls and say, this isn't normal. I'm seeing a whole directory or many directories getting encrypted. Something doesn't look right here. But Goran, maybe we can switch to the Linux documentation, and I can highlight the differences. So some SAP notes recommended here, and versions. Again, our testing has focused on modern releases. So if you're using very old releases of Linux, contact us, contact your local Microsoft person. They'll get in contact with us. Old versions of Linux, we haven't tested it. Ankit worked on switching from Audit D to the new eBPF framework, and that's been hugely successful. And Ankit, which version of Linux we need to have eBPF? I think the older versions of Red Hat, they don't support eBPF.
Yes, so eBPF as a technology is not supported for RHEL6, so anything other than RHEL7 will work there. And it has added a lot of stability to the system. So particularly the SAP enterprise servers have real problems in using up like Defender earlier because of stability concerns. There were a lot of performance issues, was bringing down the SAP services. All those things have been like in the past when we switched out to the eBPF technology, and has proved out both in terms of stability as well as performance. So it has really worked out. And in fact, engineering team go ahead and replicate the system house in-house before giving out any new set of releases, so that everything is tested out and not resulting in any kind of issues.
Yeah. So for everyone's information, the MDE Linux team have a Red Hat and a SUSE test system, which is used for validation. So we're verifying. So do you want to scroll down, Goran? And
I think I'd just like to add one small point there, which is on how huge this is, right? So I think Audit D as a subsystem, we used to use that under the hood in the past, but that was a notorious subsystem for the amount of noise that it used to cause. I think now with eBPF coming in, we are able to process n times the amount of data that we were able to do with with Audit D. With eBPF, we're able to process n times the number of data we used to do with Audit D, with significantly much lower performance costs. So I think that's huge in terms of the security value that comes out in addition to the stability as well.
Yeah, and in general, of course, latest and greatest of the operating system is always recommended, and when I see, for example, these version, a lower version, at least if we talk about the Azure, SAP on Azure, it's anyway not supported, right? So we are here, good to go, right? But anyway, the newest one is always highly recommended for the customers. Yeah.
Yep. Just a note, MDE for SAP, it's highly recommended for customers on-prem and on Azure,
right?
Both. So we do have customers out there with Azure Arc or whatever, but there are a set of prerequisites. So Ankit and his team, we worked, I think we were working closely together for many, many months to get multiple changes into the product. And that version you see there basically had all of the big beta changes. And then the switch to eBPF came after that. But since this time, the stability and performance really hasn't been a problem. All of the old problems we had went away.
Great. Yeah.
So you see our recommendations. Real-time protection is turned off. On-demand scanning turned on. You can see here, release ring. So we had at least one customer escalation I was involved in where they were running the beta releases. So for SAP production systems, please. I would have thought it was obvious, but please, yes, production release ring only for SAP systems.
Yeah,
not the insider.
Yes.
Cameron, when you're mentioning databases, is there any special recommendation when we are talking about sensitive environment like cluster with pacemaker and something like this? Some special configuration need to be done there or something extra?
Yes, there is. Goran, can you scroll down? There it is. It's the pacemaker.
Pacemaker, yeah.
Okay.
So customers with pacemaker should exclude those. Just note that the path is different between SUSE and Red Hat.
Right.
Why they insisted on doing that, I don't know. But I give you the commands there. So
great.
Pacemaker customers, please take note. HANA, typically HANA data, HANA log, and HANA shared. That's not always a default. But there's an SAP note specifically to reference there. And of course, your user SAP trans and SAP mount.
Like on Windows, exactly. Right.
Just for the Oracle ASM customers, MDE is not able to see ASM file systems, so no action is required.
Because the Oracle is managing the file system directly, not the operating system, right? So
it doesn't exist so far as MDE is concerned.
All right, and similar for other databases, right, as well. B2 SQL and ASE and MaxDB. All right. And here scheduling recommendation, right? Like a daily scan as an example, what you have also as well in the documentation.
Yep, I think over time, as more and more customers deploy this, as the feedback from customers continues to be positive, one day I want to enable real-time protection for SAP. I think we will get there, but at this time we recommend to have a daily scan for AV. Now, just so everyone knows, the antivirus component is running on a schedule on Linux. On Windows, as we discussed, it's continuously running. The EDR engine is always running, and the concept of exclusions doesn't really apply or shouldn't really apply to EDR. If technically it is possible to do it, but please don't do it, because in doing so you really break the EDR model if you do that. EDR will not intercept every file. It will only intercept files that are determined to be interesting to look at, and that list of files is continuously changing based on threat activity that's happening out there.
Sure. So basically, that's a kind of, we reached to the end, I believe. I mean, an overview for both Windows and Linux. What does it mean, right? And to have a, I mean, definitely, if the audience is interested in deep dive either on Windows and Linux, we can organize a separate sessions, right? So I'm warmly welcoming community just to leave us comment, and we'll follow up on this if need, right?
Yeah. So if people want to see a hands-on demo of deploying,
for example, right?
configuring, monitoring. We can simulate many millions of files, what utilities we have to investigate performance problems. We can even show offboarding the products. If SAP ask you to offboard protection so they can isolate a problem, we can go through doing that on both Windows and Linux. If there's interest, put a comment below.
Yeah, we can do a separate session. All right. Sounds great. I mean, thank you guys really for sharing this and in super important topics and with the broader community. I hope, I mean, in some time we will see you again, definitely with the newer updates as well, just to follow. I'm pretty sure it will come. I mean, it's just exponentially new stuff are coming here as the new threats are also rising all the time, right?
Mm.
Yeah, the important thing is all SAP systems should be running some protection against these modern threats. It's absolutely essential these days.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys, and definitely hope to see you sometimes later.
Thank
See you. Bye.
Thanks, Goran.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Goran. Thank you, everybody.